And welcome back to episode 50 of The Hunt. Today you are joined by your host Aidan Potts, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome my guest Robert Potts. How are you, Dad?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Aidan.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me here.
No, thanks for coming on. So, Dad, is this your first podcast you've ever done?
I did one a few years back, mate, but it wasn't for sporting stuff like this.
It was for OnlyFans, wasn't it?
Yeah. Not quite, mate. No, it was for a news channel after a incident I did.
You've had a couple of appearances on newses in your days, haven't you?
Yeah. Channel 9, Channel 7, Channel 10.
And you've done public speaking and presenting before, so you should be quite natural at this.
Oh, let's see.
So today, obviously, you're here for greater reasons than just a podcast. We're also celebrating the birth of your first grandson and my first nephew, which is a massive milestone in both our lives.
Yep.
But less importantly, we have obviously First Nations Cup coming up on the 26th of July, and we're recording this episode just to kind of hopefully build some awareness around the involvement of our culture in the sport of powerlifting, but not just the sport of itself, but I guess the awareness of raising, health standards for all Indigenous Australians, which is something that you're passionate about, I'm passionate about. It's kind of bled on to me.
Yep.
And I guess the coolest thing that I have at my disposal is the fact that you have had a lot of experience in your life working within the community as a police officer, but also, cultivating an understanding of Indigenous Australians for all policemen with your work. So we'll dive into that. But I guess if you could just give us an introduction, Dad, where your mob is and I guess your former work and how that has kind of like shaped where you are now.
Yep.
And I think if we can just touch on, how that kind of ties in the First Nations Cup after that, we can go from there.
Yeah, I suppose going back, your fans are probably going to hear how old I am now, even though I don't look it. Where do I start? Well, my first introduction to my culture goes way back to when I was actually at school. And when I left Barraba back in 1987, I was accepted into the La Perouse Aboriginal Land Council. Reason for that is I was playing rugby for Randwick under a scholarship, and the Ella brothers, particularly Gary Ella, was one of my mentors whilst I was at Randwick, because he was playing first grade, I was a colt, and they welcomed me into the community there. So I was accepted into La Perouse Aboriginal Land Council as a member, a community member, which is really something that was passionate with me, and I kept in touch with the Ella brothers for many, many years. That resulted in me expanding my education, doing a degree at New South Wales Uni. And then that led me on to the Training for Aboriginals program, which was a TAPS back in the day, back in the early 1990s, 91 I think it was. And it was a traineeship for Aboriginal people.
Yep.
It was a 3-month program where you worked for a Commonwealth agency. My agency was Department of Social Security back in the day.
Yep.
I was successful, completed that, and then they offered you full-time employment. Within 3 years, I was promoted to an ASO 4, which is one of the supervisors, which was a big achievement for me. I was only a young fella then. I was sort of in my early 20s. From there, I moved across to ATSIC, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission, where I managed portfolios as a project manager for the Commonwealth Government. And that's when you arrived. Pam and I, we decided that Sydney wasn't for us, and we thought, you know what, let's bring him up in the country where we grew up. Yeah. So we moved back to Tamworth. Yeah. So I stayed with ATSIC for a number of years, managing probably around $12 to $15 million on behalf of the Commonwealth.
Yep.
Infrastructure programs, education programs, houses being built, you name it, recycling clinics, all those things which were important for Aboriginal communities that were by themselves, where we basically gave them funding, but then they had to report back. Okay, and I was part of the auditing process, but also looking at the assessment of applications when they came through to make sure they met the criteria, and it was going to basically be a win-win for the community, but a win for the government as well, because we're giving back. Yep. So that's all good, mate. And then I had an itch in my neck that I've had for many years, because I saw a tent pegging display for the Mounted Police at Gunnedah show when I was about 10 years of age.
All right.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
So we're talking back in the 1970s.
We could probably touch on that. Gunnedah is actually where our great-grandmother's, well, your grandmother, my great-grandmother's from, right?
Yeah.
Johnson?
It even goes back further.
Yeah, right.
Believe it or not, mate, Red Chief is the king of the Gunnedah area. That was the tribe out there. And Red Chief, the king out there, his daughter actually married one of our great uncles
Yeah, right.
by the name of Cochrane. And he was an immigrant that migrated to Australia, which we're descendants of. And that's where the English-Irish side of our family comes from, and the Aboriginal. And he actually sought permission from the king to marry his daughter, and there's a book actually written about that. And I've actually got a copy of it on my phone, and I've read it, and it actually shows and talks about the transcripts of how he had to become accepted in the community and what he had to do to become a man so the king could accept him. And that resulted in him actually marrying one of the king's daughters.
Must do pretty well then, eh?
Oh, and the rest is history.
It's not like you go down, do a nudie run around the pubs.
No, not like that, mate. No, if it's it's fabulous, you know. So Gunnedah is where our mob's from. So that Kamilaroi is it, and Kamilaroi is made up of about 3 or 4 different mobs, which makes up Kamilaroi.
Yeah.
So north and northwest New South Wales.
We're like one of the biggest tribes in Australia.
One of the biggest tribes, mate, and we were warriors and hunters. And fierce enemies of the Wiradjuris.
Yeah.
Which are the other side of the Great Divide.
Range, yeah. It makes sense, you know, back in the day, how many nations there were or tribes in Australia. Kamilaroi being the biggest, obviously, back in those days, you fight for your land.
Absolutely, and you fight for survival, mate. So, you know, what's on your land's yours.
Yeah.
What you catch and you kill, you eat.
Yeah.
If someone else is coming in there, well, they're taking your supply.
Exactly right.
So, you know, but going that little bit further, mate, that itch I had from Gunnedah show, seeing a 10-pegging display with the mounted police, the skillet arms, mate, I wanted to do that.
So bad, yeah.
Yeah, because I was on a farm, born and bred. I was riding horses at that age. So, yeah, I joined the cops. Went through as an Indigenous recruit. I was a graduate intake. Now, what that means is that because I was educated, I had a bachelor's. It means that I was someone who was qualified and could study with a GPA, so I didn't have to do the whole course.
Yeah.
So the 2 year of entry to get in, I actually only had to do 6 months. Passed out, went to Tamworth.
Yep.
And I actually went to the Mounties, which was a dream of mine in 2004.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and then in 2008, I went on basically a sea change where I changed the education command within the police because they needed someone to look at the Indigenous Cultural Awareness Package.
Yep. Was that offered to you, or was that something you seeked?
No, it was actually offered to me because I knew a few people that were high up in the force, and they came to me and said, listen, is this something that you think you'd be able to do? Because they knew I had a teaching background, teaching degrees.
Yeah. At UNE, right?
Yeah, sorry.
At UNE in Armidale?
Yeah, UNE in Armidale. But also the course I did at New South Wales Uni. And I said, yeah, I think I could probably do it. So it was a 12-month project. I got promoted to sergeant in the education command. And the role was to look at 2 areas. The first area was the strategic direction for the for police and how it will be able to break down barriers between police and the Aboriginal community. And how those barriers are affecting them in the past, but more so now and moving forward to the future. And then they made me look at the Cultural Awareness Training Package, which is basically a course designed to educate police officers on how to treat and deal with incidents that involve Aboriginal people. So that Cultural Awareness Training Package was basically a course that was designed that would go for 6 to 8 hours. It was outdated. It was old. It was historic. Some of the content.
Step 1: steal their kids.
Yeah, oh, mate. It was really really badly done.
Yeah.
And it talked more so about the history and the taking away of the kids, the slaying, the bastardization, the real
massacres,
fucked up things that just happen in the day.
Yeah.
Which is just not on.
Yeah.
So I looked at it as a holistic approach. And what I did is I peeled it back. And I also sourced real information from leaders in the community, Aboriginal leaders, and simply asked the question, what do you think coppers need to be taught so they better understand dealing with Aboriginal people during a trauma, during an incident? What do you think they need to know? So things like why a young fella doesn't look a copper in the eye, why they say mannerisms the way they do, why Aboriginal women will not talk to male police officers about certain things, women's business, men's business, why some Aboriginal people will refuse to go to certain areas, why they won't look you in the eye, even the adults. All these little mannerisms and cultural understandings was something I thought, you know what, I could do better with that. So I basically went out, explored, I designed, I did podcasts similar like this, I did video sessions where I was taught how to spray ochre with my mouth, how to do paintings, traditional style. Even went and bush camped, ate some grubs, ate some goanna, like really got back to the roots, you know, and that was great. Made a didgeridoo from traditional ways, you know, hunting sticks, spears, everything. But all that content, I then put it into a course that educated the coppers on how to treat and basically deal with Aboriginal people at the worst time of their lives, okay? Because let's be honest, coppers don't go there to pat them on the back and say g'day. The reason they go into a house or an incident, it's a domestic, someone's dead, someone's been punched, someone's been hit, someone's been shot, something critical has happened. So unfortunately, for the last 25 years of my life, I've seen the worst of it. But then I've seen the best of it too, okay? So this course, being called Cultural Awareness Training of Aboriginal People for police, I designed it, and now it's called Policing Aboriginal People. That course is still being taught today.
That's good.
So 2008, that was done. And
is it compulsory to every police officer, or is it something?
Every officer is compulsory to have actually done that course. And now they actually teach their recruits that course, and I lectured that many times at the academy before they pass out.
How good's that?
So
it's something that they've applied to the interim police officers.
Interim police officers. But even if you're a 30-year dedicated inspector of police, you were told by the commissioner, guess what, you got to do this.
How was that sort of response?
You know what, there was a bit of negativity out there, mate, and that's being honest, but it wasn't more so from the white fella coppers. It was more, to be honest with you, from some of the Aboriginal network with Inside Police itself, because there's always nepotism. There's always some black fella that wants to climb over top of someone else to try and get ahead. And unfortunately, I copped a bit of criticism because they thought, what I was talking about wasn't good enough. What I was talking about didn't touch on their mob. You know, what I was talking about should have been done their way. But at the end of the day, mate,
it's hard to please 80 plus nations in the state.
You can't. And even when I went out to Broken Hill, I got criticised for doing an acknowledgement to country out there.
Yeah, I remember that.
You know,
I came out there with you. And
and at the end of the day, though, I did the acknowledgement. I didn't do the welcome. I was a visitor coming to their land. And I asked around the floor if there was someone there that was willing to do it from here locally. No one took the hand up.
No.
But as a respect, well, that's what you do. So, you know, at the end of the day, they can suck my balls, mate. It doesn't matter. The course is still there. It's done.
You've left your fingerprint on the academy.
100%, yeah.
And I think that's what we're trying to do with First Nations is leave fingerprints for our mob to finally do something with their lives, because everyone can access a gym these days, and everyone can improve their health. And what comes with the things that we do inside the gym is a lifestyle that keeps you healthy, keeps you living longer, frees your mind, and obviously if we can make it more culturally sensitive to our mob, it's going to welcome them more, and that's where First Nations comes in. But I wanted to wind it back a little bit, because at the start you mentioned how when you moved to Sydney to play footy, and you were welcomed into the La Perouse Land Council. Were you already a member of the Tamworth Land Council at that point?
No. No, because I grew up at Barraba, which is as you know, mate, it's 95 k's northwest of Tamworth. There was no Aboriginal communities in Barraba. No. There was a couple of Aboriginal families, which I got on quite well with. O'Leary's, for example, was one family there. The Darlingtons, another one, played footy with them all. So there was no community there per se that could accept you. Tamworth, yes, but I didn't know many people in Tamworth when I was growing up.
There's hundreds of them in Tamworth.
Yeah, exactly. But I was from Barraba.
Yeah.
So when I moved back to Tamworth, though, in 94,
Yep.
because of what I'd been doing with ATSIC and
Just Laparoos in general.
yeah, and started with the taps. Like, you know, I pretty much reached out then, and I got to know the people who were at the Lands Council. I didn't join the Lands Council though. I actually joined the Mara Aboriginal community. The reason I did that, it was basically because they needed help. They were a housing organisation that had around about 15 houses as part of their portfolio, which were granted to them through ATSIC. And then the rent collection would go back to the community, and then that would again source funding for NAIDOC days, for special events that needed it, health problems that needed it with people in the community, these sort of things. So I joined that Aboriginal community, Mara, and I was chairperson and on the committee there for well over 10 years. So yeah, I was accepted welcomely there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what to the listeners who don't understand how it all works in terms of being seen by your community as an Aboriginal male or female is that you need to be accepted into that community, and what comes with that is a lot of documentation. You need birth certificates, you need death certificates, you need marriage certificates, you need elders obviously present as well. How do you become an elder? Do you just get old?
No, not necessarily. Elder is granted to a person, like you could be 30 and be called an elder.
Yeah, okay.
It's more based on your knowledge, your experience, and your persona within the community.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, for example, I'd probably be considered as an elder if I went back there, okay?
Yeah.
Basically because of my knowledge, and probably because of my age now too.
Yep.
But it's more important that the barriers that Aboriginal people face, you know, being a community member, you're there to support and try and break down that barrier.
Yeah.
To strengthen the acknowledgement between one to the other. And that's the important factor of it, you know. And your cup you're doing, mate, let's be honest, you're breaking down barriers, teaching and educating people to try and be the best they can be. You know, but I think more so it's important that people realise that if you don't quite get the benchmark you want, it's not a failure.
No, it's not.
You've still achieved something by turning up and representing.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's one of the hardest things is if, you know, you don't quite meet the benchmark for participants at the competition, it's not the whole point. Like we're not hosting the competition just because we want to try and make money or you know, satisfy people's needs for a local competition. It has no common sense as to why you would do that competition in alignment with nationals in 2026 because it's already been, and it just perfectly aligns with NAIDOC week, and that's simply what the competition's all about. But that's cool to hear, like on the, I guess, more common knowledge stuff around the Land Council, because I know I didn't get my acknowledgement until I was 14 or 15.
Yeah.
Because it was just one of those requirements that I needed at that point in my life because I needed help. I needed an education.
Yep.
I needed help because obviously I come from a broken family in terms of you were living in Sydney at the time and mum was in Tamworth, and obviously, you know, it's hard on a single income, and sometimes you do need that support that the Commonwealth can give, which is, you know, which I'm very thankful for. But it's just funny that you touched on how the Red Chief had to accept that marriage, and there were processes involved with that, whether it was, you know, cutting of the ear or something,
well,
something traditional back in that
book,
day.
The book doesn't go into those sort of traditional things of how he had to become a man within the community.
No.
But I would imagine it would have been something pretty fierce.
Yeah, but then if even more contemporary wise, like getting accepted into your mob and into your land council, like I remember I was taken to, it wasn't the courthouse, was it? It was on Peel Street, and I was taken inside, and then there was a board.
Yep.
And I stood up, and I was pretty sure I was with you, and I was with Zeta Knight.
Yep.
And you said I present my son to the council, and I pretty much just had to sign a bit of paper, and Dalton was the one that signed me off.
Yeah. It was
Yvonne Dalton.
Yvonne Dalton, yes. And there was a few people. Harry Cutmore was there.
Yeah. Cuddy.
There was Mr. Munro was there.
Yep.
Because
you need a number of people to
acknowledge and support.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was a big stage in my life, which I'm still very proud of, clearly. But to bring it all back into the circle of, you know, what it all means in terms of having more cultural awareness for Aboriginal youth and involvement in the sport, why do you think the representation of something like First Nations Cup matters to our mob?
I think it's something that's important for collaboration. I think it's an understanding between your sport and Aboriginal people to show them, you know what, we can be the best at this and we can represent. And it doesn't matter, like I said to you before, that you go on to represent at Worlds. It's how you represent yourself when you first come here to this. And it's also about the week of celebration, mate.
Yeah.
NAIDOC's about celebrating who we are, where we come from, and being together for that week.
It's not reconciling. It's not being sorry. It's not trying to, you know, put on a sad face for, you know, us. We're celebrating our achievements, and
it's a collaboration, it's a partnership, and it's engagement.
Exactly right.
That's what it's all about, mate.
And I think role modeling has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I would have to say I'm probably the most represented Indigenous Australian in the terms of powerlifting. And
good on you.
And I'm very proud of that. And I want to try and make sure that I'm creating more role models. And
that's what it's all about.
And this is what it's trying to create. So
I'll put this question to you. You look at measures of results or achievements, okay? So there's two things that I look at when I'm preparing something, and there's quantitative measures, then there's qualitative measures. So how do you say is a qualitative measure when you basically go to a competition to get a result? What's your qualitative measure?
Literally just knowing that I've tried my best, because I know that everything I've done and lead up to that result, it's a reflection of the average of effort that I've put in.
So training, eating, sleeping, represent training, like as in how many sets you do out there, preparing your body for it.
how many weights on the bar. The average effort that I've put in towards my training, my nutrition, my recovery, my psychology, my connection with community in terms of like what we have here at Hunter Performance Centre, like the average of those efforts are a result of my outcome.
So how do you juggle it though, mate? Because you're representing yourself, but you're also representing, like I know you're heading to Japan, you're taking several people there with you, coaching them. You've got to be there for them as well. How do you juggle that? This is
the funny thing, is because the way that I'm representing myself is through them. They represent it for me. So they're obviously there to achieve their own goals and things. But the thing that I think where the magic happens in the background of the foundation for what it means to me is that they represent my values, the company's values, and that's what means the most to me. So
see that's awesome, mate. But guess what? I think I've rubbed off on you a bit.
He loves that.
So there's your qualitative. So what about quantitative though? What's a quantitative measure?
Well, that's just going to be the numbers, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's numbers don't lie. You know, whether you're like, I am proud to be a representative for Indigenous athletes and coaches, but I'm also proud to be holding myself up with non-Indigenous athletes and coaches, having that dual accomplishment of doing both on the international platform as an athlete and coach, and having a number of like international representatives that are competitive on the international stage, but also having another number of representatives on the novice level who do want to connect with their health a little bit better. Because that at the end of the day means more to me than winning world championships and breaking world records.
That's awesome. See, and this is what it's all about. Your event you're hosting here, right? It's a circle of life, mate. It's basically closing the gap, which is bounded by 4 important things, okay? I wrote them down for you this morning so I didn't forget them. You got people, which is the people who are going to turn up. You got culture, Aboriginal culture. Doesn't matter whether your mob's out at Broken Hill, Moree, Tamworth, Newcastle, Sydney, doesn't matter, okay? It's about the culture and bringing it together. It's a celebration. Not sorry, like you said before. More importantly, it's community here locally, okay? So who is a leader within the community you can bring along to it to inspire them, just to watch, just to be there as a guest. Get up and speak for 5 minutes about what they've done, what they've achieved. That's important. That's part of community.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is the engagement process.
Yeah.
The engagement and the learning that people are going to see and achieve by turning up to this, to celebrate NAIDOC, that's important. Yeah. And that's what it's all about, mate. And I'm so proud of what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's good.
Trying not to cry, but yeah, I think that's why we have it at the end of now a week, so we miss it by a weekend essentially. Yeah. But like being such a niche small sport, it is hard to, be something that the elders look to do, like in terms of the Awabakal country here on Newcastle lands. Yeah. It is hard to kind of like jump ahead of other events that are more largely representative of the culture to celebrate. So I've strategically placed it at the end of July. So hopefully we do have that availability for those elders and those people to come and do the practices that I so dream of. We've done it in the past where we have ran it on NAIDOC week, but it's your cousin you're calling down to do a smoking ceremony. Yeah, they can't quite blow the gum leaves the same as an elder, you know what I mean?
That's right.
But no, that's good. I appreciate those kind words. So I think the last thing I'm going to ask you, Dad, before we wrap it up is how do you see, because obviously you haven't participated in powerlifting before and you're a spectator and you're a fan of the sport purely just because I do it. But how do you see lifting as a metaphor for cultural resilience for people who haven't started powerlifting or they already go to the gym and they're thinking about doing it? How do you see that?
I think more so resilience is a manifold thing, okay? Yeah. It can be part of a person's development and understanding of what it feels like to fail, but further what it feels like to achieve a number. So I think the sport that you're representing, what you're doing here, it basically gives people an outlet. Yeah. It gives people a focus away from what their everyday life is. And you're joining a community within this gym for that hour session, hour and a half, whatever it might be.
4 to 5 times a week or something.
Yep, 4 to 5 times a week. You're generating friendship. Yep. You're generating memories. Yep. And guess what? That all goes towards your resilience. Yeah. Okay? It goes towards you building a better tomorrow. Goes towards you being fitter. Goes towards you being healthier. And guess what? When you go home, you're going to have your meal. And because you've worked out and you're tired, you're going to sleep. Yeah. It's the way it works.
Yeah. I think with a lot of people who look to start in powerlifting, they don't realise the amount of resilience that comes with the little efforts that you make every single day. And one of the things is that as a lot of young lifters here at Hunter Performance Centre, one of the hardest things as a coach is trying to help them overcome the challenge of looking too far ahead and getting lost in the forest for the trees. Yep. Because as you said, like what you're doing today sets you up for tomorrow, literally tomorrow. Like you're in the present. Yep. But if you're thinking so far ahead, like, oh, I'm never going to reach that amount of kilos on the bar. I'm never going to be able to reach that weight class. I'm never going to be able to do this because it's so far ahead. That's half the problem of why you're not resilient in the beginning, because you're looking too far. Yeah. So the thing that I find that I guess helps create resilience, culturally speaking, for our mob is to try and make sure that they're setting themselves up for realistic goals. Yeah. Like instead of trying to go to the gym 5 times a week, start at 3 and then, go from there. And if you're thinking that things are getting too easy for you in the gym, add a set or, add some reps, increase the weight, add an exercise. Like there's so many more things you can break down to make it achievable. And I think that's when a coach can step in and help guide that process, because the starting point matters, not the end point.
No, and careers are no different, mate. Yeah. Like, for example, I didn't decide to go for promotion in the cops until I did nearly 16 years service. Yep. Why'd I do that? Because I wanted to be someone who went into that role and that rank, and I could have went there at 7 years. Yep. Okay, no problem. But I wanted time so that if a person walked into my office as a sergeant and they knew I'd done 16 years, they think, holy shit, this fella's been around a bit. Yeah. So they know the answer I was going to give them was well thought out. Yeah. It had life skills attached to it. I've probably experienced it, and they're going to get the result. And this gym work's no different. Yeah. You've been doing the sport now for a number of years, so they're going to get the best education, the best coaching, and that resilience, little steps, mate, little steps. Like I've watched people on your videos where they're trying to hit a mark Like, for example, Gussie. He's hitting 225 today for 2 lifts, I think.
Yeah.
For his back squat.
Yeah.
That's an achievement.
Yeah, it is.
That was his one PR going back how long?
A
month or so ago?
It was weight he'd never even touched before.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so he told me this morning.
Yeah.
He's excited.
He is, yeah.
And that's what it's about, mate. And I've seen the change in people since you and I renovated this joint and set it up to where it is now.
Yeah.
Like I said, mate, and that's all part of your resilience in achieving what you've done, chasing your dreams. And, mate, I can't be any more prouder.
Thank you.
Both your mum and I are.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
And your step-parents too.
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I'm trying to not make it like a podcast about me, but it keeps coming back to that.
At the end of the day, though, mate, like, I'm proud of you, but like I've achieved what I've done in life.
Yeah.
And I've changed a lot of people's lives, but particularly children.
Yep.
Because those that don't know, I actually did nearly 10 years of investigation work in the child abuse squad.
Yeah.
Where you're dealing with the absolute scum of the world, and kids are hurt.
Yeah.
But I put away the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And
even if you try to put away the worst of the worst, I think it still rubs off on your kids, like specifically to Tana and I, but not to go down another rabbit hole of being, consumed by that sort of industry. But the thing is, the whole point is that I think, as much as you are proud of what you see here in front of you, we're proud to have that, I guess, life experience of what you've gone through and what mum's gone through and our step parents for what has made us to be the people that we are. Like, it wouldn't be nothing without you guys. So I am really appreciative of that. And so is Tan, obviously.
Yeah.
And she's going to be a great mother to our new Indigenous born grandson or nephew.
Yeah, he's been accepted in this local community, in about a month's time.
Yep. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I need to go get mine done. Can you register 2 land councils at once, or?
You can, mate, but you need to get a letter from the town.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
And say, listen, this is where I'm living now.
Yep.
And I'd just like a letter of acknowledgement and permission to try and be accepted down there.
Yep.
So you still,
because I'm going nowhere, and obviously I want to work closely with the Indigenous community, even though I'm not a Wabakal.
But so you still are a Kamilaroi man.
Yeah.
But they welcome you here.
Yeah. And
they accept you here.
Yeah.
Although you're still Kamilaroi.
Yeah. Okay. Righto. I won't be able to welcome in that though, or is that no? Yeah. No. That's all right.
But mate, at the end of the day, though, if there's no one else there,
you acknowledge.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Which I've done for the last 3 years at First Nation. So I'm hoping this year we have a proper welcome, because that's going to be special.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? On the topic of welcome country, obviously there's been a lot of backlash lately with people saying, I don't need to be welcome to my own country. I was born here. I was raised here. I came from, my family and ancestors come from overseas and they've moved here. It's not my fault that I'm here. Like, why do I need to be welcomed to the country that I was born in? Yeah. I think people get it wrong as to what a welcome actually is. We're not welcoming them to Australia or to the city or town that they're in. We're welcoming them to feel like they are accepted in our community to do what they need to do.
That's exactly right, mate, because we're accepting them or welcoming them to the oldest living culture in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what it's about.
It grows by 10,000 years every year, by the way.
It does. But don't get me wrong, like all the sporting events that do all these things every time. Yeah. Like, I'll be honest, I think it is probably a little bit overrepresented sometimes.
It's hard. You're forced to swallow it. Yeah. And unfortunately, full respect, some elders just get it wrong.
Yeah. And it becomes a political plot where they go off track.
Yeah, yeah. But that's because they're so heavily tied to their culture.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, I think for international events, at those big sporting things, I think it's probably, important. Yeah. But I think it is a little bit overdone. It is. But, for something important through NAIDOC week, total different story. And, if you can get someone locally who's represented and highly sought after, absolutely, mate, I think it's a great thing. Yep. Yeah, it's
something that has been circulating, obviously, the media for a while now, and we're not going to hear the debate on it or submit a...
No. At the end of the day, we've got our opinion on it, but that's ours.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, well, we'll be back in about 5 minutes, probably 1 second for you guys, and we're going to hit Dad with 5 interesting questions that we need to know about him. Talk soon. And we're back. So how we're going to do this, usually we do overrated, properly rated, underrated, which means I say like Brendan Smith going to South Sydney Rabbitohs, and you would be like 3, 2, 1, properly rated, or you think it's overrated or underrated, then you explain why. But today we're going to do something different.
Say popular related?
Proper rated.
Proper rated. Okay,
like
as a good
you
thing.
Yeah, good thing.
Yeah.
Or it's overrated or underrated.
Yep.
But we're not doing that. I don't know why I just had to explain all that to you. Probably because you've never heard of it before.
Nah, never.
But we're going to do something a bit more simple. We're just going to do 5 straight questions. And
Yep.
these questions is going to tell everyone about who you are.
Yeah, right.
All right?
Yeah.
So, all right. First questions.
Yeah.
Or first question, sorry. If animals could talk, which one do you think would be the biggest smartass?
Chihuahua.
Why's that?
Because they're cheeky little bastards.
So is your dogs. You got sausage dogs.
Yeah, but Chihuahuas are worse.
You reckon?
They're vicious little fuckers.
Have you ever been attacked by one before?
Absolutely.
Freaking hell.
As a kid, especially.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the
Chihuahuas out in Barraba.
yeah.
Huh?
The Grants. They had 4 little bastards.
You're kidding.
Oh, mate, they used to run up along the fence going up the lane towards your pops.
Yeah. Oh, at the front there.
Yeah.
Oh, my
yeah,
gosh.
they'd rip in, man.
Yeah.
They were biting your ankles. Mate, Chihuahuas.
Wasn't it fenced off? Like, could they?
Hey, these bastards, little fence, they get through it.
Oh, all right. Did
Mate, they're little pricks.
you ever kick one of them?
Nah,
Why?
I don't like cruelty to animals.
Oh, really?
Yeah, nah, I'm a lover, mate, not a hater.
Yeah, okay.
But those fuckers, man, they were.
Jeez. Cause some trauma.
Yep.
Question number 2. What is the most ridiculous thing you believed as a kid? It can't be Santa.
Good question.
So when you were young growing up, is there something that you believed in wholeheartedly and then you realised it wasn't real?
Wasn't real. Easter Bunny.
Yeah?
Mm.
Okay, so you keep it the festive theme.
Yep.
Do you have any stories of how Nen and Pop used to set up Easter morning?
Yeah,
or?
like there was dusted footprints.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Use
yeah.
dirt.
No, they use flour. So they like,
Oh, yeah.
So, and I found out down the track, like my dad, he had a little cardboard and he cut it out like a footprint
All right.
and he sprinkled dust over it. And like when I was a kid at their old house, the hallway was lino
Yeah.
and it was brown.
Before it got carpeted.
Yeah, and he had little prints up that.
That's so cute.
Yeah, so yeah.
That's good. All right. Well, question
Memories.
3. Yeah. Question 3. This is actually quite ironic.
Mm.
If you were arrested with no explanation, what would your friends assume that you did?
Bash someone.
So you wouldn't bash a chihuahua, but you'd bash someone else.
Oh yeah, if they piss me off enough, yeah.
Why would they assume that?
Oh, I don't know, because I don't muck around with people.
Yeah,
You know, at the end of the day, you can only take so much cheek,
that's true.
you
That's
know,
true.
but you never strike first.
No.
But you want to make sure the first one, if it's coming out, is a good one.
Yeah, for sure. 'Cause they won't be able to swing another.
Nope.
Question 4. You've just won a lifetime supply of one completely useless item. What is it?
Crypto.
Crypto. That's Dad's new thing.
Yeah, no.
Just recently found out
yeah.
crypto coins.
Yeah, you never know though, mate. Something could turn into a gem. So
You always hear those stories, don't you?
yeah, you do, mate. You do.
How do you kind of cipher the bullshit? But
You just got to be careful of the spamware and the scams out there. And there's so many people pretending to be those that are experts.
yeah, right.
You know, you might friend someone and then all of a sudden you'll get another 10 requests that will have that person's image, but it's not them.
Yeah, right.
And then they're trying to talk to you away from TikTok onto WhatsApp. Next thing they're asking you about what
Bank
you've
details.
got, signing up to theirs and, you know, and you
Yeah.
sign up and it's just a scam in India or it's a scam
Yeah.
in US or somewhere, mate. So
How's your scam radar pretty good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I think that's the cop in me, mate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, last question.
Yep.
What's your go-to excuse when you want to leave a boring event early?
I'm tired. It's time to go.
Really?
Yeah, mate. I've had enough. I'm tired. It's time to go.
What about when you were young? So obviously we grew up in a Catholic household.
Yeah.
Church once, maybe twice a week with Pop.
Mate, I was probably doing it 3 times a week.
Well, when I was young, like 4 to that's the earliest memory I've got. 4 to 14 years old, and I'd go visit my grandpa and then a Pop all together. Like I said, we all lived in Barraba.
Yep.
I would go to church and I'd hate it, sitting there boring as batshit because the reverend person up the top just I was old as cows.
Yep.
it would make it exciting. And I don't know about you, but if you've been in the church recently, it's a lot more lively and
Because the priests coming through a bit younger,
yeah,
and they've tried to modernise it a bit.
modernise it. Yeah.
The reason being, mate, is because people were moving away from it because of that.
Yeah.
Because that's just tradition. That's the way it was. I grew up, like, Dad was pretty strict.
Yeah.
So, and
I
often
know.
I'd have to ride my bike from the farm into the church and be the older boy a number of times a week because no one else would do it.
Yeah.
Dad would make me do it. And sometimes you'd only have 3 or 4 in the church.
Yeah.
Actually at the mass.
Yeah.
So I think the church has modernised a bit.
It has.
And look at the new Pope.
100%.
He's
the
a young
youngest
fella.
one. Yeah.
He's from
American.
the USA. like crap.
Yeah.
And he speaks a number of languages.
He does.
So
Latin, Italian.
Yeah, he's an educated man, mate. And he's going to be around for a long time.
Yeah. Have you looked into how they actually select the Pope and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I do.
Pretty cool, eh?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the smoking, and the black smoke means they haven't decided, and then the white smoke they've decided.
Yeah, and they all have to have a majority vote.
Yeah, and if you got like 300 cardinals in there, that's a lot of people to vote.
Yeah. How do they all come to a conclusion?
Well, at the end of the day, I think it's a very political thing where you've got a lobby.
Yeah.
So they'll have their groups.
Yeah.
They'll have their minions.
Yeah.
And those minions talk to the ones that aren't quite sure yet.
Yep.
And then it's just a matter of getting them on side. It's the same as politics.
Mm.
And I think it's no different, I think there's a lot of prayers in there. They're not in there smoking cigars and having a port.
Have you seen those AI generated things going on?
Yeah.
They're in there with strippers and whatnot.
Yeah. No, but they're debating and they're praying for an answer.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed that in a couple of weeks I'll be going to that city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rome.
Yeah. So it's one of the things because I'm heading to the Mediterranean next Friday.
Yeah, nice.
So we're away for a month, and Rome's one of the cities we're going to go to. So
although
all that's all over and finished and done, but to walk around it and know that only a couple of weeks ago it was happening. Yeah. It's a life point, It
is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's the European churches are something else. Take your camera. It's the visuals and the way that the buildings are built and the artwork, it's just all next level.
Yeah.
All right, well, that concludes episode 50. Dad, thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome, mate. Thanks for the invite.
No, you're right. Yeah, well, we welcome, obviously, all Indigenous Australians and non-Indigenous Australians to First Nations Cup. Even if you just enjoyed, I guess, what we're about, we'd love to see you there. It goes without saying as well, obviously, it's hard to be not biased towards our mob, but we do welcome all cultures to First Nations Cup. Like I identify and I see the diversity of how many cultures there are in the sport of powerlifting. As we all know, powerlifting was created in eastern parts of Europe and has ever since so expanded globally, and it's now touched a very small population of people here in Australia. And I would love to make it bigger than what it actually is currently. So if you want to come and celebrate that authentic diversity of cultures in the sport, this is the competition to do it, and I'm planning to obviously make it bigger and better every single year. And if you do want to sign up, you can go onto our bio on Instagram or the website at Australian Powerlifting Alliance and register the event there. But yeah, much gratitude, Dad, for coming on. Appreciate you a lot. And
no worries, mate. And if anyone out there touches base with you, wants to know more about my story or wants advice on perhaps joining the police, or fire brigade, because I did that for a long time as well. By all means, mate, just send them my way and I'm happy to chat with them.
Beautiful. Thank you. See you guys. Take care, and we'll tune in next week.